Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Chapter 6, Text 40. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Partha na eva namutra Vinashastasya vidyate Nahi kalyana krit kaschid Durgatim tata gacchati. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Partha, O son of Pritha, Naeva, never it is so. Iha, in this material world. Na, never. Amutra, in the next life. Vinashaha, destruction. Tasya, his. Vidyate, exist. Na, never. He, certainly. Kalyana Krit, one who is engaged in auspicious activities. Kaschid, anyone. Durgatim, to degradation. Tata, my friend. Gacchati, goes. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Please repeat. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Pritha, a transcendentalist, engaged in auspicious activities, does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.15.17, Sri Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva as follows. Tvaktva swadharma charanam bhujam hari bhajatam avekto ta pate tato yadi yatra kwa vabhadram abud amushyakim ko varta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. If someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything. For material prospects, there are many activities, both scriptural and customary. A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness. One may argue that by Krishna consciousness one may attain the highest perfection if it is completed. But if one does not attain such a perfectional stage, then he loses both materially and spiritually. It is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties. Therefore, one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subject to these reactions. The Bhagavad-Gita assures the unsuccessful transcendentalist that there is no need to be worries. There need be no worries, even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties. He is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten, and one who is engaged will continue to be so even if he is low born in the next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. This is a long purport, so we'll look at the first half of it today. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Srimad Bhagavatam, all glories to the Bhagavad-Gita. Bhagavad-Gita is like a beautiful necklace that has 18 strands. And each strand has many valuable gems and jewels. To an ordinary person, when they look at the necklace and they see the different jewels on the necklace, they may sometimes just see something sparkling, flashing, glittering. Yet to a jeweler who is an appraiser can look at each jewel on the necklace and see something of immense value. So similarly, the devotees of the Lord are like the educated jewelers that look at each gem and just does not see something sparkling and glittering, but see something of great immense value. So in this gem here today, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Partha na evaha na mutra vinasyas tasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschit dugatin tata gachati. Bhagavan here is explaining to Arjuna, to help Arjuna overcome his doubt and dilemma. And this chapter is very, very instructive, because remember the beginning of the chapter, Bhagavan is explaining to Arjuna in the previous chapter the idea, the question of sannyasa and renunciation came up. So the Lord begins the chapter by explaining actually what is the sannyasi. And then he explains that a sannyasi is actually not different from a yogi. We know yoga means to link with the Supreme. So a sannyasi is not different from the yogi, Krishna says, because one cannot become a yogi unless one does sannyas. Unless one is detached from the material world and gives up material desires. Then Bhagavan explains what are the different levels and stages. At the beginning stage, one practices the mechanical aspect of yoga. But in the advanced stage, then one ceases material activities. So nowadays we see that the idea of yoga is very popular as far as just one aspect of yoga, and that's the physical aspect, the asana. But never is it recommended actually the Vedas recommend, and Bhagavatam in particular, that yoga is meant to understand Hari. It is never said that yoga is meant to cure liver disease, or to cure heart disease, or to make the complexion beautiful, or to stop gray hairs, or to improve the eyes. They said that yoga is meant to understand Hari. So this popularity of yoga now is generally a misinterpretation by those who are in the beginning stages of yoga. And it's quite understandable, because beginners most often time will misinterpret if they haven't been introduced properly to the goal and the proper knowledge and procedure, understanding of what they're doing, then they're left blindly and they'll misinterpret as to what is the ultimate goal. So many people now think that yoga is to cure material problems, specifically of the physical body, and then also of the mind to some degree as well. So Bhagavan explains that this is the beginning stage of yoga. And then he goes on to explain how to practice yoga. That the first one has to understand that the first criteria of practicing yoga is one has to deal with the mind. That one has to control the mind. A lot of times when people hear the word control, we become adversive to that word. But, so that's the mind reacting because it doesn't want to be controlled. But I invite you now to just think a moment, what is actually control? What does it mean to you? What does control mean to you? Discipline? Being in charge? Trying to force control? Do's and don'ts. So these are all actually accurate descriptions and good ideas about control. One idea also of control is regulation. So you're regulating something that is impulsive, that is moving independently. Okay? So you regulate that movement. So the mind is naturally impulsive. Desires, they come spontaneously into the conscious state. Just by some pushing force is there. We know the pushing force actually is the three modes of material nature. So that pushing force is there. So yoga, Krishna explains that one has to control the mind. That is the key to practicing yoga. So that control means regulation of the impulses. If we try with force to control the mind, then it might work, but it might not work. Arjuna addresses this later on. It's the subject of our talk today, actually. Arjuna addresses this idea. So Krishna recommends next that he says the mind can either be your friend or your enemy. Okay? And one whose mind is regulated and disciplined and controlled, then the mind is not only the friend, but the best friend. Best friend. And when the mind is not disciplined and controlled, the mind is the worst enemy. Worst enemy. So we know what it means to have a really good friend. You know, Krishna is called the best friend. As a matter of fact, in this verse right here, Krishna also addresses Arjuna, my friend. But we know what it means also to have, everybody has enemies. But your worst enemy, it's don't even want to think about it because it's such a burden to think. It's such torturous experience. That's the worst enemy. So Krishna says that the mind which is controlled will be the best friend. The mind which is not controlled will be the worst enemy. Okay. Now, then Krishna goes on. After that, he explains the actual physical process which will help in controlling the mind. He says one has to first, you go to some place that's secluded and private, and you sit in such a way in a very comfortable seat, so it shouldn't be unbalanced, too high, too low. And he recommends that then you fix the mind upon me within the heart. Okay. Then Krishna goes on to explain also that how in order to practice yoga, what are some criterias? as far as the impulses of the body are concerned and the mind is concerned. So one has to regulate those impulses. So he says that one should not eat too much, eat too little, sleep too much, sleep too little. So Krishna is very positive. He says that, he doesn't say that you shouldn't be who you are, but he says that one should be temperate and moderate in your behavior, in your thoughts, in your activities, like that. So therefore he says that, that you should, one, should be regulated in his recreation, physical activities, and spiritual life too. The Krishna is encouraging Arjuna along this line. Now, after explaining the setting up this criteria for practicing yoga and entering into sannyas consciousness, Arjuna says, yes, that's all. That sounds very, very wonderful. But the mind in itself is stubborn and obstinate. And to control it is like trying to control the wind. So back to the idea, if we equate control with force, it'll be like trying to stop the wind. Because Arjuna says that it's stubborn and obstinate. And it's much more, at this particular stage, even though the spirit is greater than the mind, at this stage of consciousness, the mind appears to have dominion over the spirit. So if the spirit tries to control the mind through force, it only leads to frustration, anxiety, confusion, and inner pain. Right? So Krishna recommends try to make friends with the mind. He recommends that first. But even Arjuna is saying that's difficult because just like amongst household pets, he said that dog is man's best friend. Especially if you train the dog from a puppy stage, and the dog will stick with you and support you through thick and thin. Yet, one cannot train the dog through force. Sometimes if a person trains the dog through force, then a lot of times the dog will turn on you because the dog is accustomed to reacting to fear. So sometimes that fear will overwhelm the dog due to circumstance, and the dog may even attack the master. But if you train the dog through friendly behavior, activities, then the dog's mind becomes like that. And the dog becomes very friendly and loving to you. So even in challenging circumstance, the dog still is programmed to remain friendly. And even if the master appears to be aggressive, the dog still knows how to respond in such a way because it's been trained like that. So we can see the mind like that. I would suggest that don't try to force the mind, because the mind, Arjuna is saying, is obstinate and stubborn. Look, Krishna says then, he says, yes, I agree with you. Yet, one can do it through constant practice. You just keep practicing over and over again. And then one will achieve. Now the next question Arjuna has just recently asked is that, well, what happens to a person that's been practicing, but they don't complete the practice? So, Sri Krishna, Bhagavan, he encourages Arjuna in a very, very nice way. And he says here that for one who is engaged in transcendental activities, and specifically we have a very wonderful word here, Kalyana Krit, one who's engaged in spiritual activities. If the transcendentalist is engaged in spiritual activities, then dugatim tata gachati. Then one will not meet any kind of durga or destruction. So it's the auspicious activities that we are interested in. Those auspicious activities means the activities which are outlined by the Lord himself. Because if we look actually previously now, I looked and I counted, at least about 5 times, Krishna keeps saying to Arjuna to meditate upon me. See, because some people will object and say, well, why should it be Krishna the person? But actually there's about 5 times where Krishna says to Arjuna, fix your mind upon me within the heart. Meditate upon me. One who knows that I and the superior soul are one will never be lost. And will always be with me constantly all the time. Krishna constantly reminds us to think about him. So, this is suggesting to us and instructing us that by fixing the mind upon Krishna, that is the auspicious activities of the transcendentalists. And we have a example, even many examples of transcendentalists, excuse me, who, by fixing their mind upon Krishna, were able to withstand physical, material, and spiritual destruction. We can look, for instance, at one of the Mahajans, Yamaraj. Yamaraj is a great Mahajan. And Yamaraj, his particular Kalyanakrit, is that he's in charge of all the hellish worlds and the Pitris, the people that pass on and come. He's in charge of directing them in their particular future destination. And Yamaraj, it was quite interesting. I was looking at this verse, then I remembered, actually Yamaraj, he is the son, the offspring of Surya, and Surya's wife, Samgya. They had one son who was called Shraddhadev, who was a Manu. Then they had twins, Yamaraj and Jamuna. So the Jamuna here, she is the twins, she's the twin sister of Yamaraj. And this is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and it's coincidentally, if you look, this is chapter 6, verse 40. If you look at the 6th canto, chapter 6, verse 40, that lineage is described. Canto 6, chapter 6, verse 40. Today's verse, chapter 6, verse 40. So Yamaraj, he's engaged in such great auspicious activities that he instruct all of his lieutenants and soldiers and Yamadutas that they should never ever go near a devotee of Hari. But Yamaraj himself was cursed by the Muni, and Yamaraj was cursed to take birth as a Sudra, to live as 100 years as a Sudra. So here we see in this verse that in the purport, can anyone see where that is, where Prabhupada says that even if one is, Prabhupada explains that even if one is low, at the very, near the end, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten, and one so engaged will continue to be so even if he is lowborn in the next life. So even though Yamaraj took birth as Vidura, his auspicious consciousness was not destroyed. So there was no destruction spiritually, no destruction materially. And Yamaraj, he took his birth. He was the brother of Dhritarashtra. And he was always being harassed all the time by the Kurus. So much so that Duryodhana, Because Vidura was living with the Kurus and then he would hear about the intrigue and the plans of destruction that the Kurus had against the Pandavas, and then he would whisper the secrets to them and would warn them about the impending danger that was about to come to them. Duryodhana, especially Karna, Sakuni, they really didn't like Vidura. So they became so angry at Vidura. They said, why are you living here at all? You are our enemy, you're supposed to be part of our family, but you are betraying us. You're nothing but a low-born Sudra. Get out of here. Vidura didn't put up a fight. He left. And he went wandering throughout India. And he visited many holy tirthas all over India. In the meantime, Krishna had ordered Maitreya that when you see Vidura, you become his guru and you guide Vidura. And we look at the Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, after the first 2 chapters, then the dialogue really starts. It's the dialogue of the Vidura, who is Yamaraj, the Lord of Death. And Maitreya is leading Vidura through his enlightenment. So we see how this transformation is taking place in the very beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam. How to read the Bhagavatam, get the instruction like that. So in any case, when Krishna left, and the Yadus left, Maharaj Yudhisthira was enthroned, and Vidura went back. And Yudhisthira was so happy to see Vidura again, all the Pandavas. They were so happy. And Yudhisthira begins to glorify Vidura and tell everybody how Vidura saved them when they were little kids, when they were young, how he helped them out against the enemy. And then Yudhisthira, he asked Vidura, how is Bhagavan doing? How are the Yadus doing? How is everybody in Dwarka doing? But Vidura knew that Krishna had left. And Vidura became solemn and quiet. And he did not answer. He just started talking about other things, because he did not want to bring any heartache. Plus he knew that Arjuna was coming. And Arjuna was going to give the bad news. So instead what Vidura did was that he looked at his brother, stepbrother, Dhritarashtra, who was now very old. And he told Dhritarashtra, he said to him, he said that you are now an old person. And these young people here, as a burden, they're taking care of you. Your organs are all getting weak. There's no question of losing your eyesight. You don't have eyesight. You're losing your hearing. Your sense of touch is becoming dull. All of your senses are now withdrawing. You cannot move freely here and there. You're about to meet death. Now, who is speaking to Dhritarashtra? Yamaraj himself. He's warning Dhritarashtra, and he's leading Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra hears the message. He says, yes, you're correct. So Vidura says, better that we sneak away in the middle of the night so that we don't break their hearts. Because the family is taking care of you. And even though they're doing their best and, they're going out of their way, ultimately, as an old person, you are a burden. And the closer we get to death, the more we become a burden for those who take care of us. They have to clean up after us, our urine, our stool, feed us like a little baby. And if we're not advanced in consciousness, tolerate our grumpy attitudes and behaviors. So Vidura is guiding his brother. And his brother says, yes, better leave and go and prepare myself to die like a true Kshatriya, like I really am. And his wife Gandhari, who was forever faithful, she said, I'll follow. Prabhu, I'll stay with you. So they head north in the middle of the night, sneak away and head north. And the next morning, the Pandavas, they wake up and everything is going on. They, Uncle, breakfast, come on. And he's not there. There's no reply. And everybody, where is he? Where is he? Nobody knows. So then all of a sudden, who comes to the palace? Anybody remember? Huh? Naraji comes into the palace. And he tells him, your uncle left already. Everybody's gone. Vidura, Gandhari, and Dhritarashtra. They've all left. They've actually gone already to the Himalaya mountains, to the southern portion of the hills of the Himalaya mountains. And in 5 days, they'll quit their bodies. Dhritarashtra will quit his body. And then the mother will cremate the body. And then she'll enter into the funeral pyre. And this happened. Then after that 5 days, after Vidura did the rites, then Vidura himself went on more pilgrimage. And they finally went to a place called Prabhas. And there he became absorbed in meditation on Hari. He had already been informed by Hari that even though now you're living like a Sudra named Vidura, you're actually Yamaraj. So now Vidura sits down to meditate. He begins to, yes, remember, and prepare to leave his body. Then Vidura left his body also. So we can see from this enlightening example how the Mahajan, Yamaraj, is showing us that by doing our duty, engaging in the activities of serving the Lord, then there's no destruction on any level. Krishna, he says, neither in this world, na eva, iha, na amurta, not right here or right now will you ever be destroyed. So just like there's a class of enlightened beings, actually the firstborn sons of Brahma, Vairajas. And they're born, they practice great yoga and become highly enlightened. And through that yoga, the Vairajas, they go very, very high. But they don't complete the process because they enter into the Brahmajyoti. At that state, they become Atmarama, self-satisfied. Then after living, actually they enter to this, the realm is called the Sanatana Loka, the spiritual realm. For millions and millions of years, they live like this. Then, after that, they come down again and take birth. Many of them, especially on the planet Earth in India, they're called Brahmavadis. And they preach the knowledge of Brahman to us. Then they continue to practice yoga, specifically like Sankhya Yoga. And the rites and rituals. Some of them worship the deity. And then by that, their yoga continues on. And then they start to realize their personal feature. They become blessed by Bhagavan. And then by hearing, associating with advanced devotees, they hear the glories of the Lord. Like in the whole Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami, he was a Brahmavadi. Then he heard about the sweetness of Bhagavan. And then he became a bhakta. and cease being a Brahmavadi. So, from this we see, in this verse, Krishna explains to us that if you engage in auspicious activities, doing one's duty, just like Yamaraj, his duty is to execute the dharma of the management of the souls that pass on. So just like a warden of a prison lives on the government property, and he has a government house, maybe a government car, receives rations from the government, all medical benefits, everything is from the government, but he's living on the prison ground. Yet, even though he's on the prison ground, he's still in the government compound. So that's Yamaraj. So even though he's taking care of all the hellish worlds and managing them, he's living in Krishna consciousness. And he's always doing the duty, Kalyanakrit, which is the dharma of Bhagavan. Somebody has to do this job, so that's the job of Yamaraj. And so the duty of the Lord that's called dharma. Dharma is not something that we invent or make up on our own. Dharma means the rules and regulations that are given by Bhagavan. These duties and regulations, they're Shabda Brahman, just like the Bhagavad-Gita is, Shabda Brahman. Shabda Brahman means basically it's two things. It means that it's the divine sound vibration, like Om, or Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the divine sound vibration. That is called Shabda Brahman. And also Shabda Brahman means the word, the vacha of God. So here, Sri Bhagavan Uvacha means that this is Shabda Brahman, spiritual sound vibration. So the laws of the universe, that is Shabda Brahman. So Yamaraj Maharaj is acting according to these divine words, Shabda Brahman. And he's engaged in duties he is performing his activities with utmost attention, and those activities, according to this verse, those activities are called, what's the word here? What's the Sanskrit word? Kalyanakrit. Kalyanakrit. So everyone say that word, Kalyanakrit. Kalyanakrit. That means auspicious activities, and auspicious activities, according so far up to Krishna here, are activities which are directed towards Krishna. Because Krishna, as I said, up to this point, at least 5 times he's mentioned that the yogi keeps his mind fixed upon me. So this is Kalyanakrit. Auspicious. So Yamaraj Maharaj is engaged in Kalyanakrit because he's acting according to Shabda Brahman. So then even when Yamaraj was cursed to live as 100 years as a Sudra, he did not have to experience the destruction of his consciousness. Dugatim, Durga. Durga is a destroyer. Durgatim, Durga restricts us and destroys our efforts and endeavors in this world. Durga is actually Krishna has two types of energies, illusory energies, Yogamaya and Mahamaya. Yogamaya is the energy that appears to make us bewildered and feel defeated. The Yogamaya is for those who have affection towards God. So Yogamaya, she bewildered Mother Yashoda. Yogamaya, she bewildered Vasudeva and Devaki. Actually, Yogamaya bewilders all the living entities in Vrindavan. But that increases the affection and realization of Krishna. Mahamaya bewilders those who are adverse to Krishna. Those who are adverse to Krishna. So just like Jai and Vijay, they were also cursed like Yamaraj. They came into the material world. And after they got the curse by the Kumaras, who originally themselves, we talked about the Brahmavadis, the Kumaras are originally Brahmavadis. But they went through all the 7 stages up until they got to the 7th realm, where they met the 2 doorkeepers of that 7th realm, Jai and Vijay. And they were prevented from going in. Then they cursed that you do not deserve to be up here in the 7th realm. You should go down there to the material world. Then Jai and Vijay, they became upset. And when they became upset, Narayan himself, he says, don't worry, it's okay. I already know this. Actually, this all didn't start with these young guys here. It started with, anybody remember? Your curse started, you have to go in the material world, not because of the Kumaras, but because of, Bolo? Huh? You're right, you're right, Lakshmi. Because one day Narayan was taking his nap. And Lakshmi tried to come and to go inside. And Jai and Vijay said, Nay, Mataji, you cannot go inside. And Lakshmi, she said, oh, you're not going to let me go inside? So then she started this process. And it's the actual Kumaras who put it into action. Because we didn't want to blame, not we, but the Lord didn't want to put the blame on the mother. So he let the Kumaras take the responsibility. So that's what he told Jai and Vijaya. It's already, Mother Lakshmi already started it some time ago. And these boys have just come to fulfill it. Right there. But don't worry, you go. Excuse me. But you will practice yoga to attain me. But you will practice yoga in Rajagun. That means you will practice yoga with anger. And as a result of that, you will be adverse to me. You will be my enemy. That's why Mahamaya comes into the picture. So Mahamaya, she bewilders those who are adverse to the Lord. So incidentally, we should learn from Jai and Vijay not to practice yoga in anger. We should try not to do devotional service Most specifically, hearing and chanting in an angry frame of mind. Not only anger, but in a tamasic frame of mind. But in a sattvic frame of mind. When we practice chanting in a sattvic frame of mind, our mind becomes conditioned by sukha, happiness. When we practice chanting in rajasic frame of mind, our mind is full of worry and anxiety. So you'll see quite often people practicing their japa with a whole intense, worried look, a monstrous look. It works, yet we are practicing yoga in an angry state of mind. So anyway, Jai and Vijay, I would recommend to think about this concept very, very deeply so that one can program the mind to be sukha. As Krishna is called Sukhada. He's called a happy person. So if I'm meditating upon Krishna and I'm meditating with unhappiness, what am I doing? Fighting Krishna? So it is much more advantageous to practice yoga in a happy frame of mind. So we should look at our mind, especially while we're chanting. And instead of feeding the anger and the unhappiness, we should check the anger. That means control the mind, back to where Krishna says, discipline, regulate the mind, and then make friends with the mind so the mind can be friendly to us, and the mind will then be friendly towards Krishna. So, we have about 5 minutes. I'd like to stop now. Again, I'll read the verse. Partha na evaha na mutra vinashas tasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kaschit dugatim tatagachati. And I'd like to invite your ideas also for the group, any realizations, experiences, and ideas that you have that you would like to share. Yes, sir.
So you said to make mind friend.
Yeah.
So mind is acting crazy.
Yeah.
So then at that moment how to make it friend?
Yes, that have to take some time. See, Vishnu, we have to understand what is Vishnu Shakti. Vishnu Shakti means three things basically: para, apara, and avidya, karma, sangya. Para means understand the absolute. Apara means understanding the self. Avidya, karma, samgya means that you have no understanding of the self or the supreme self. So you have to understand the self, and you have to think about certain times. You say, when I think about this, how does it make me feel? It makes me feel very, very nasty. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And I go on thinking about this thought, then my discomfort continues. Maybe I can even notice that even I'm chanting and I'm thinking in such a way, and my eyes are tensely tight, and I'm chanting, but I'm not really hearing, and I'm so much focused on this emotion, this negative emotion. So that we start, then you have to then tell the mind, just relax a little bit. It's okay to chant comfortably. The problem is there. It'll be there tomorrow. It'll be there in 5 minutes. The problem is still going to be there, but it's not going to change because I'm angry at it. So we have to talk to the mind just like you talk to a friend that's having some problem. You have to take your time, understand the problem, then come up with some solution for the problem. That you have to do to the mind also. Another question. Yes, our thought. Yes.
You mentioned
Son of the Lord Himself. Now, how do we understand this vis-a-vis Namo Brahmanya Devaya Brahmana Hitayacha? The Lord is the maintainer and protector of the cows and the brahmanas and Brahmanical culture.
Yeah.
And this pastime happened sometime in the Satyuga.
Okay.
So when the Lord Himself broke the Varnashrama Dharma in Satyuga, and we are trying to rebuild it in an impossible age like the Kali Yuga, how do we try to understand this?
Yeah. But remember, first of all, that wasn't Krishna who put Jaya and Vijaya in the material world. It was Narayan, Lakshmi. Yeah. We endeavor as much as we can to follow the Dharma that the Lord has laid out and do that duty. That's called Kalyana Krit. That's all. You just engage in the auspicious activities towards building up the Lord's Shabda Brahman on this plane. And in your life, in your consciousness. That's called Kalyana Krit. And then you as an individual will not meet destruction. And when you go on into your next Janma, you'll carry that Kalyana Krit with you. One last question, anybody have an idea? This side?
Can we use the mic? Mother Parvati probably wants us to use the mic because
Sure.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe you could just stand and speak into it so that...
You were saying these particular thoughts and emotions, we need to not have them while we're doing japa, to try to...
No, I didn't say don't have them. I said,
But to, okay, to talk to the mind.
we have to deal with it.
To deal
Yeah.
with it. So would this apply also to any other devotional service doing? Sometimes, you get angry if someone asks you to do something or you carry certain emotions
Yeah.
with you and it affects your service.
Yeah, that's just like it is when you eat food that's cooked by an angry person. It affects the consciousness.
So the services can be done in ignorance, passion, or goodness.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we see our mind is engaged, there's always a time when whatever you're thinking, you become conscious of it. At that point, when you become conscious of it, then try to work consciously to come up with an alternative perspective if it's not a healthy perspective. And that, you see, Arjuna is saying here, this is Arjuna's dilemma. He's saying, I don't know if I can do this. Because it's so hard, it's a hard job. Nobody ever said that Krishna consciousness was easy. It's a hard job. But Krishna says, yes, I acknowledge that it is difficult, but you can do it, just keep on practicing. Keep on practicing, and by being detached. Now being a sannyas with it, renouncing it, and practicing over and over again. So the first time we may not be that successful. It may only last for a few seconds, the next time a few more minutes. Then it happens again. We don't have to beat our minds up the very next day and say, I thought I dealt with this 2 weeks ago. Here I am dealing with it again. No, just go and practice it. We have to practice again. It's like mental athletics. You have to get up and exercise. And if one day you miss a workout, the next day you're a little stiffer. So it takes a few more minutes to get going. But the athlete continues the training. So we're all running back home, following Prabhupada's footsteps back to Godhead. It's the marathon, we're all running. So it's the athletics that we have to continue practicing, the exercise of dealing with the modes of material nature. Is that okay? Haribol? Haribol! Haribol. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.